don't let mine save up. I use them soon.
Oh, shit, my wife. You're right.
How you doing, Mike? Mike,
Ready?
how are you? That's good.
Oh, yeah, it's all right for now.
For now?
You get up, though, we might. That feels good right now.
Feels really nice right now. Thank you.
Yep. Sounds good, ready.
Yeah.
Danny, you good?
Call meeting to order. Shelley, can do roll call, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. District 1, Councilman Rio.
Present.
District 2, Councilman Pastor.
Present.
District 3, Councilman Latham.
Present.
District 4, Vice Mayor Stapleton.
Here.
District 5, Councilman Gonzalez.
Here.
District 6, Councilman Shipley is excused. Mayor Gameros.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Chief Robinson, can you lead us in the invocation, please?
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful unto thee for the blessings that we enjoy, for the ability to live in this community and in this country and the freedoms that we enjoy. We're grateful for those men and women who serve in this community and elsewhere for their efforts. We ask that thy blessings be with those who are working at this time to deal with those emergencies that are occurring throughout our state, that they'll be watched over and protected. We ask that thy blessings be with those families who have been touched by tragedy, and especially those in our community. Please bless and comfort them. Please watch over this body this evening as they deliberate and work to do the business of the city. Bless them in their efforts and in their dialogue. And these things we pray for in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Mariano, can you lead us in the pledge, please?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start with summary of current events. Mariano, we'll start with you.
Well, I've been on vacation for about 10 days, so I don't have a lot to report, but I was visiting Charleston, my fiance who lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and they have this one particular thing that I sure wish we had, and it's called water. They have about 4 river and creek systems there. It's full of low country and marshes, and rained every day, and a lot of greenery there. And I kept asking people to ship water back out to the west, and they just didn't want to do that. But thoroughly enjoyed my time, and I plan to go back again. So I'm back and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, sir.
Thank you. Freddie?
Thank you, Mayor. I just would like to extend a special thank you to our Police Chief Walters and Commander Haynes for administering some resources in my district. We've been having some concerns of some travelers that are going at a high rate of speed in residential area there. And so Chief has kind of stepped up some of the patrolling there to see if we can curb that those high speed people that are using our city streets as highways and freeways. Seems like I personally have not seen it, but I've been contacted by numerous amounts of our constituents in a certain area that is creating a concern and a dangerous situation. So, Chief, thank you for administering that patrolling out there, and hopefully we can curb that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Freddie. Mike?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to apologize for not being here for the last meeting, but I was up in Utah. I had a grandson graduate from high school, so But I did watch the last meeting. I thought everybody did a good job. I thought all the responses were very positive, and I was glad to see that it went unanimously as far as the sales tax went. So good job.
Thank you.
That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Jesse?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank the police chief, fire chief, and the community members that helped respond to the search and rescue efforts that went on up at Round Mountain. It's never a light job, and I appreciate you guys. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mike?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I was able to attend the first Friday the last time around, and what a turnout. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. I want to thank everybody that was involved. There's a whole list of them. Linda, Teresa, Melissa, Jerry, John, all of you guys, Chief Walters, Chief Robinson, everybody, thank you. That just seems to be getting more and more attention. And what a great time to spend a few hours out there and visit with people. So thank you guys. Keep up the good work. So thank you. And then, secondly, I'd like to congratulate the Glow Fire Department on the Type 3 engine. Everybody's working around the clock to get that thing outfitted. So I know I talked to Captain Cormac the other day. So him and the entire crew that's involved in that. So if you can pass that on, I appreciate it, Chief. And then lastly, I was able to attend the town hall in Miami last Tuesday. And again, I'd like to congratulate the whole team, Mayor Gamaros. You put on a great show. So thank you for your efforts. I know you have a lot of support from Danny, Linda, Lisa, and everybody. So thank you. It was a good turnout, I think. A lot of good comments. And that's all I have, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I want to start off by Justin, one of your employees. Just pass on a compliment from two different organizations. Round Mountain, the Sunrise Challenge, went above and beyond. They were really happy with it. That's the only name I got. I don't know if there's other workers from Public Works there, but Justin's name came up for the Sunrise Challenge and also for the Farmers Market, coming back and checking with the crew, with the groups here to make sure they had everything in order and everything they needed for their event. So tell Justin a big thank you from these individuals also. Just, and a reminder with Farmers Market, remember it's every Saturday, and I think they found a new home. They really like, I think with the new playground equipment, I think they want to stay on this end over here, really nice with the trees and the shade, and you know, you have a lot of area that they can grow from also, so they're really happy there, so I'm glad to see that grow. And then lastly, I just want everybody to keep the Richard and Armida Dixon family in your thoughts and their prayers. Prayers for Melanie Dixon, who was tragically, was in a tragic event. And pray for her kids. This is a stark reminder of the country we live in, with domestic violence and gun violence. And she was much too young to be taken in the manner she did. So please keep the Dixon family in your prayers as they go through this week and deal with that tragedy. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to say staff is right now at full throttle in so many levels. The heat is on, there's lots going on, doing good, the growing pains of experience and taking care of business for the tragedies that we have to step up and take care of. So just thanks to all your staff for working so hard in so many ways. I would say with the heat and everything like that, watch out for each other, watch out for your neighbor, watch out for those people. It's amazing. I'm getting old and not that easy to handle the heat, but so many people do handle it both as work and as play and as forced to. And lastly, helpful hint to anybody going to First Friday, get there before 8 o'clock because they've been running out of food and all I was left with was nachos last First Friday. And not that that was a bad thing. So anyway, we need to get more food. Mayor, members of council, thank you.
Thank you. We go to first community call to the public. Do we have anybody online wanting to speak? And, or any cards? We have no cards.
You have one speaker.
Walter.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I just wanted to make sure that we covered all the bases. Tragically, we lost one of our community members on Friday, but I wanted to give a special shout out personally to Chief Robson, who actually took control of the initial incident command on the search, and the efforts by John and his employees from Public Works, outstanding. And so council gets a good picture of all that was out there. Probably the third of my department was dealing with this. Department of Corrections, Rangers had Globe Fire out there in full force, Tri-City Fire, all of Public Works, countless citizens from the community out assisting us, the DPS, and the list goes on and on and on. And this was a concerted effort for a long period of time, and thank you to all of those that participated, and a special thanks to Gary and to John, because the things they did were just outstanding. So I just wanted to say thank you, and that make sure that they got recognized.
Thank you for that information, Chief. Special presentations and ceremonial matters. We have council will receive an update on the Veterans Park Playground renovation project, and we have John Angulo.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Supply and demand, as you all know, that's our issue throughout our country and through our town, and even with you probably hear that budget process. Just really quick on this playground equipment, City Hall is pretty much, as far as the playground stuff, is actually complete, other than the wood. That's where our supply and demand is. We're waiting with Game Time. I was on the phone with them, hoping to get a better update than I have had since last week. Wood chip fiber are to come by. They will deliver on site. Originally, we were hoping to have them deliver it to our yard, and then we just accordingly bring it over. Since we have the anticipation of the playground, that's what we're waiting on. Is just to fill it up and do some groundwork around there. I don't want to do the groundwork until we get the chip in there, because equipment on it. We're ready to dedicate one group here and the other group at the community center, because we're hoping to, once the chip shows up, we'll have both of them complete. So City Hall playground equipment is complete. We'll have to go 2 more phases where we'll do the concrete work. And then also we met with contractor today. Richard Thomas met with contractor to kind of come up with a light scheme so we can make sure it's safe. Told him when we get the chip anytime, in the next week or so, plan on putting a light tower out there, because those kids are going to want to be here. So we'll make sure we do everything we can to get that open as soon as possible. The community center playground equipment, concrete work has been done, all the borders, everything almost pretty much is in place as well. But once again, they were missing some of the key parts for the last pieces. If you go up there and look, there's some pieces out there on the ground. They're missing pieces, and those are sitting in the dock out of state. So it's trying to get them into town. As of yesterday, they were waiting for a truck to pick that up and deliver them. So they didn't have all the final pieces. So once those goes up, the good thing is they've already set the foundation. So if we get the chips before we get those parts, we can start placing the chips. And that open that up. The crews have been also working on that community center bathroom and doing that remodel. We're even having crews possibly work on Saturday and Sunday. So when the playground equipment comes up, we can start pulling those ugly porta johns out of the way, and we actually can open that area up. I know it's the big demand. Even my granddaughter's just, chomping at the bit to waiting to hit the park. So we're filling it in every direction. I know the community is really excited about it, once you see the bright equipment out there. But it's basically the supply and demand. As soon as we get the wood chips, I will dedicate all, 2 groups at each one to start spreading that. It wouldn't take more than a day once they're on site. Questions?
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Item B, council received an update on the community center pool renovation project provided by Structural Preservation Systems. And we have James.
Evening, Mayor, evening, Council. I think my purpose being here tonight is to manage the expectations of initially what the facility is going to look like, you know, when we complete it, and obviously the completion date, which is the bear in the room at the moment. I just want to start off by saying that the city and the hospital have been unanimous. They want to provide the top-class facility, both for a recreational environment and a competition environment. To get those two models to blend is a unique type of structure. It's going to be amazing once we're able to hand it over to you. Our goal is to hand over a premium facility to you guys. A fast-track project like this, it always comes with its challenges. And John actually stole my thunder. The supply chain problems that we're having are impacting on our schedule. So if we go back into time, we're into 5.5 months of the contract term. There should have been traditionally an 8.5-month contract in terms of the software construction program that we use, but we were able to reduce that to a 6.5-month contract based on the estimates given to us by the main suppliers, the vendors, our fabricating team, for the bulk items being the slide, the bulkhead, the splash pad equipment, the gutters, and the filter system. Lead times based on the economic conditions at that time, back in January, perhaps were a little bit sort of on the favorable side, but regrettably in the last couple of months, we've found that the supply chain, both in raw materials and labor, are impacting on our ability to deliver on time. So just one case in point is the slide manufacturer, who is, they mass produce slides all over the country. They have a stock demand twice as much as they had 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but they're working with half the labor. So fabrication of these items is making it very difficult for them to deliver on time. These factors obviously have made our project very challenging in terms of delivery. We initially, when I took over the project in early March, we were hoping to get done by the 4th of July. I committed to that as close as I could. I gave my best, but at this stage, we are looking between 2 and 3 weeks later than that, based on the estimates that I've been given from the suppliers of the slide and the splash pad equipment. I don't think it's going to be an option to open the facility without having those components, you know, in the pool area anyway. So yeah, we hopefully we are going to be targeting the week of the 15th to the 22nd as our completion date. We have put in double the amount of labor. We've doubled our crew from the structural side. We are going to add labor to any of the vendors that deliver products to us, such as the gutter system and the filters and the pump and the heater. We are going to provide extra labor to those subcontractors, just so they can focus on what they need to do. So we will be there. In South Africa, we call them skivvies. So we'll be moving equipment around, helping them as best we can. We've cut their time down from 4 weeks to just under 20 days. So we are trying. We are hoping to be able to give you guys world-class facility. You know, I'm sure you've seen the renderings. Once it's complete, it will be something that the whole community can be proud of. I would welcome you guys to come over to the site at any time. We shooting concrete at the moment, so things are happening. The gutters and the liner of the pool are being delivered this week. The pump is being delivered this weekend. So there's going to be a lot of activity, and as I say, when you get a chance, love to see you there.
These pictures we're seeing right now, that's the latest renderings we're showing, that we're seeing? a little
That,
different.
no, sorry, that is the initial rendering of the amoeba roof. I'm sure you're aware that when we initially costed the project out with the hospital, we came in after getting most of our pricing, relative to massive increases across the market. We were close to 35% over budget. So we had to do quite a lot of value engineering on the actual building. Together with Paul and Linda and his team, we sat and decided what is necessary to retain in the project. We've kept all the splash pad components. We've kept the slide. We've kept the kiddies slide. All we've had to do is we've had to reduce the roof to a more of a corrugated type structure. The amoeba roof itself on the initial design was close to 700,000, basically because of steel pricing. So we had to reduce the roof. We haven't changed the design of the actual pavilion per se. It's still got the same type of facilities, the restrooms, the showers. What we did remove, you'll see there's a concession stand in that particular rendering, but that has been pushed to phase 2. All in all, the value engineering side, we had to find close to $1 million to remove, and we managed to do that just through teamwork with collaboration from the hospital and with the city's team, who I must tell you are wonderful to work with. One of the best teams I've worked with, and I've worked around the world. So,
Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff is so pleased with partnering with Structural. I believe the hospital is too. They've gone the extra mile, pulling additional internal staff in, the nights, the weekends, the long hours, the phone calls, the one guy that never talks on the Zoom meeting, who does all the purchasing. I think he's just kind of shell-shocked. And Kyle, I think it is.
oh,
Yeah. And weekly we have a meeting where we go through, also our team in the audience with Will's always out there keeping an eye on things, and Rick is the on a higher level keeping an eye on things. Jerry, Walt, John, everybody just making things happen. It's our utility, Southwest Gas and APS really going extremely, just helping out as a community. And it wouldn't happen, and Structural has been in the middle of it and doing a great job. And I think, as I told James, this council wants a quality product, and that is the first priority. So, anyways, but I know that we were hoping for the deadline. I thought we had a real shot at it. We'll see. But I never say never. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I'd just like to make a comment. I just want to appreciate your efforts in doubling up where you can, tripling up where you can, providing labor, providing other resources to help this project move forward. I think we all, at least I understand the supply chain issue. I deal with it myself in my professional work. And it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And, I'm even hearing stories that concrete is even becoming more difficult to attain. So, to hear that we may be pushed back 2-3 weeks is encouraging under the circumstances. And I just want to thank you for your continued efforts in Structural and the city's team to and see this project through. You know, when we first started this, when this council first started, we had a vision of just, you know, fixing up a swimming pool that we had. And it grew and it morphed into larger scale and a more pleasant center. And that came through partnerships within the community. And so I continue to back all the partnerships, and I continue to back the effort in this grand venture that we've somehow morphed into. So just again, thank you, and I'm sure our city staff is going to do what they can to help this move forward. And I just want to say thank you to Structural for their efforts and all the design teams and all the players in this event. I know this is a daunting task. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Just lastly, Paul was referring to a team. We use a lot of the local vendors as our subcontractors, and they are all, you know, fully committed. We have people driving to Texas to pick up block for us, you know, to build the pavilion. So it's a real community project, and one that I'm proud to be involved with, really. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, members of council, just real quick, there are two other team members in the room that I've had, Linda and Jessica, and there's many people that are doing it, but they've been, you know, Linda from the forefront and Jessica is dutifully keeping us all on task and keeping the paperwork flowing. So anyways, it really is a city community effort.
Mm-hmm.
Mike?
Yes. James? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir.
You said probably 2 or 3 weeks rather than the July 4th date?
Yeah, so we are expecting to finish between the 15th and the 22nd. The slide is due to be delivered on the 15th. It should take us 5 to 6 days to install.
Well, you know, I would just like to say, you know, I go out there pretty regular and look at the work that's going on and everything, and I would congratulate you on your effort.
Thank you.
But you know what, if it takes more than a couple more weeks, please take more than a couple more weeks, because I know our citizens are anxious for the pool, but I want to see, you know, top line project out there. And
there's no compromise on quality. You know, we did have a chance of making the deadline, but we would have given you a far inferior product, and that's not fair on you guys, and not fair on the community. So I didn't even want to go down that road.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm sure the council does too.
Thank you very much for the presentation, James.
Thank you.
And thank you to our staff for all the teamwork effort to make this happen. Item C, council will receive results from the second annual employee satisfaction survey that was administered by LaCoya Shelton with HR Revolutionary Consulting and provide possible feedback and direction. We have LaCoya online.
I believe we do. And there's LaCoya. Hey, LaCoya, can you hear us?
Hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
We're going to turn the volume up a little bit on you as we get the sound check going. And but thank you so much. I just raced back from vacation to be here by Zoom tonight, and we'll get right to it. So LaCoya, let's say hello so we can check the sound.
Okay, hello, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Much better.
Oh, good, good. All right, well, thank you so much, Paul, and good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for the time this evening on the agenda to talk about the results of your most recent employee survey. This is the 2022 survey, and it is the second survey. So it's exciting for many reasons. One, obviously, because you get to hear directly from your employees about the employment experience and their individual and collective perspectives about it, but also because you have a baseline for comparison, because again, this is the second survey. So I'm just going to spend some time going over some highlights of the survey, and of course, answer any questions that you might have. Some key findings I'll touch base on, just briefly go over the participation rates for this year, as well as the methodology, what the overall scores were across the board. And then we'll drill down a little bit into what the top 5 questions were and the bottom 5 questions. And I'll also explain how we categorize those. We also asked some open-ended questions at the end of the survey that give employees an opportunity to provide some narrative response. So it's a great balance because the survey then gathers data that's both quantitative and qualitative. So it does help provide some additional insights. And as with any survey, there is, and as with the last survey that was done as well, there typically is a need to do some follow-up, maybe to get further clarification on what employees may have meant in some areas of feedback, or to just in the action planning process. So again, it does provide a nice balance to get the insights, and that is enhanced by having some follow-up discussions and activities. And I think last year that happened in the form of some focus groups that yielded some really beneficial, helpful information. And then just a little bit on next steps in terms of going forward. Are there any questions before I get started?
Doesn't look like it, LaCoya.
Okay, all right, very good. So some of our key findings, like I said, and highlights, I just wanted to start with that. The participation rates overall, they were good. However, they were down pretty slightly from last year, down about 21%. And we think that this is likely due to the communications. This year, they largely came from outside the city of Globe. They largely came from my company, from Revolutionary HR Consulting. When communications are sent internally, it conveys a bit more importance about the topic when it comes from the organization, when it comes from leadership. So we believe that that's likely the reason that we did see a decrease. So the good news about that is something that's an opportunity space that's easy to address going forward. Positive attitudes toward the city overall have improved. Employees responded most favorably to questions about the aspects of work that involved those closest to them. So their teams, coworkers, direct supervisors, department, and that's not unusual. Generally, you will see the trust and again, more favorable responses are in response to questions about individual employees themselves, and again, those close to them. As the questions get more broad in terms of asking about the overall organization or the system, then we tend to see those go down just in general in terms of surveying. So those types of questions that may impact employees individually, we saw employees respond a little less favorably than that. But again, overall favorable responses increased overall from the previous year. Areas that were a focus in 2020, we did see some significant increases in favorable response percentages, such as in response to the City of Globe cares about employees, that increased by 22%. And then communications and pay, those switched places as the largest concern. Communications actually became the highest area of concern for employees, particularly for those who are seeking follow-up and follow-through from some of the promises that were made after the last survey, which was done in late 2020. So the discussions that followed that, dissemination of information around those action items and transparency is largely what the communications is referencing. So employees overall, they recognize that there are improvements that leadership and administration have been trying to make over the past year and that they have made. And others believe that the follow-through on some of those improvements or the commitments to those improvements have not occurred, or that they have not been applied consistently or equitably across the organization. And a lot of it, again, centers around communication, the need for more frequency in terms of what is being communicated. So employees are looking for those opportunities to engage in some open and honest dialogue. And there is still some thematic issues around trust, belief of some favoritism in some of the comments that we saw as thematic, not at a high volume, but certainly enough to be noteworthy. We also found in some of the key findings that leaders are not as worn out as they appear to be in the last survey, but they're certainly still feeling some intense pressure, some intense stress. There was a noticeable increase of about 19% among supervisors in response to one of the key questions or statements that I am ready to take on more responsibility in my job. So while there was an increase, again, in response to that, supervisors overall, that category, were the lowest overall in terms of favorable response percentages across all survey questions, with some of the areas showing decreases even in positive response percentages as compared to last year. So for example, the level of stress in my job is manageable decreased in favorable response percentages by about 5%.
We have a question, a council question?
Yes.
Mike.
Okay, this is Councilman Pastor. The first line on this the slide, leaders are not as worn out. However, supervisors/managers are still feeling intense stress and pressure.
Mm-hmm.
The supervisors and the managers, are those the leaders you're talking about, or are those two different groups?
Yes, Councilman Pastor, thank you for that question. That is the same group, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other areas of concern that did emerge this year as some significant issues include staffing, recruitment, so areas around staffing like recruitment, retention, training and development, those did emerge again as a concern. Not terribly surprising given what I just mentioned about what we saw from decreases about the level of stress with particularly the leadership category. So it is a kind of natural companion piece or natural progression that then people would be concerned about resources. And because obviously resources help balance the workload. Some of the comments also showed that employees are looking for more support in the form of additional resources. There's a willingness to take on additional duties, but even in the form of training. So a lot of the comments, and I'll talk a little bit more about the comment section toward the end, but a lot were focused on those staffing items. Fairness and equity, that did continue to be an issue. For example, in my division, hiring and promotion decisions are fair and equitable. That dropped by 18% for the supervisor manager category in particular, and then 1% overall. Also, employees continue to greatly value the benefits that the city offers, with retirement continuing to be something that is mentioned frequently, and employees continue to feel valued and respected within their individual teams, their departments, and by their coworkers. There's a really strong sense of teamwork and camaraderie that exists within departments, and that does show up frequently in the quantitative and the qualitative, or the open-ended comment section as well. Now, in a little bit in terms of participation, I know I mentioned that it did go down a little bit, and that we think that the opportunity is just to ramp up the communications and to have more come from the city as opposed to coming from outside the organization. The survey period ran from February 14th to March 4th. That was about 3 weeks. We did extend it by 1 week to help increase participation. I gave the percentage, but by numbers, 69% represented 72 out of 104 employees that were active at the time to be able to participate and respond. And that was a change from about 96 employees who responded in late 2020 to the initial survey. There were a total of 31 questions, and the survey was available in both English and Spanish. Of course, all the responses, they were and they remain completely anonymous. Survey questions really sought employee views from several different perspectives, including individual perspective, the supervisor, team, department, and organization. So as I kind of mentioned before, we start kind of at the micro view, if you will, the individual, and then we kind of go further and further out with the questioning in terms of the different perspectives that we gather. Some demographic data was also collected that represents the department, job role, and tenure. And so based on that demographic data, that's how we're able to analyze the data. That's how we're able to categorize it in different ways. And of course, we kept some departments, we combined some departments if they were very small to make sure that we could maintain anonymity. So the spread of possible responses, they range from strongly agree, to neutral, or neither agree nor disagree, disagree, and then strongly disagree. Response percentages in the report, we group them as favorable, neutral, and unfavorable. And then those categories represent the specific responses that employees provide. So in the report, the favorable responses are defined as those responses that indicate agree or strongly agree. Neutral responses are just that, neutral. And then the unfavorable scores represent disagree or strongly disagree. This slide here just kind of shows the breakout of participation by department. So I won't spend much time here. But just wanted to include that detail here for your reference. Again, just kind of shows the breakdown out of the total number of employees, which I believe again was 74, I think I quoted, out of the total number of, or 72, excuse me, that this again is the breakdown by department. This is a visual that just simply shows the percentage change in the four main categories that I just mentioned. The overall response rate, the favorable response rate, neutral, and unfavorable. And it just shows a comparison from the last survey to this one. So you can just see this, a lot of what we've already covered in terms of where you saw some decreases and gains. Again, in the response rate, you saw some decreases, but you saw some gains in the favorable response percentage. The neutral response percentage stayed the same, and then the unfavorable response percentage went down. So it's a really good thing that we're seeing the response percentages shift from unfavorable to favorable, and that we're seeing the neutral responses stay the same. That's really good movement. So that means that there's actually changes in perspective or perception, as opposed to people just moving over into a neutral category. So that's really good movement to see. This is the overall favorable response percentage that I mentioned before, 77%. So this is for all questions. Overall, again, 77 positive response percentage, meaning employees selected either agree or strongly agree to those questions that, again, led to a favorable positive response. So that indicates overall positive attitudes towards the city. Of that 77%, 38% were strongly agree and 39% were agree. Again, 16% were neutral. Overall favorable responses increased by about 3.5% from the 2020 survey to now. And I'll note that, just as I mentioned with neutral responses, again, I just kind of want to underscore that is an excellent thing to see movement from unfavorable to favorable. Neutral responses can be a really easy option for respondents if they're less inclined to express their opinion, or if they just truly don't know. They may have no idea about the topic. They may simply not care. There are a lot of different ways to interpret the neutral data depending on what the other scores say. So there may be a desire at some point to do a deeper dive around those areas, but for now, again, it's really good movement to see that we're trending in that direction. This is a visual of the favorability index, what we call it, but represents the favorable response percentages. Again, some significant improvements there. So I won't go over what those numbers are again, but again, we'll just say that there is a continuous trend toward favorability. And then if you recall, we broke or sought perspectives from different levels that are listed on the left. And this slide here shows the breakdown of favorable, unfavorable, and neutral responses by those categories. So individual, that's a non-manager or individual contributor, non-manager, supervisor, team perspective, department perspective, and then organizational perspective. So the teams question category that had the highest favorable response percentage at 83%, which was a 1% increase as compared to the 2020 survey. And individual scores remained, they increased as compared to the previous year as well. The previous year was 64%, and this year we saw 70%. As I mentioned earlier, overall, we saw a drop in the supervisor category, and that did drop here a bit, although it is still high. The neutral response percentages in this category did also increase in this particular category. The organization as a category also increased by about 12%. And there was some overall, again, slight movement, again, shifting toward, in all of the categories, shifting toward higher favorable response percentages. And now looking at the department breakdown, which is also listed on the left, the police department reported in with the highest overall favorable response percentage at 85%, which is a change from the 2020 survey, where the administration department actually had. Uh-oh, I hear feedback. I hope that's not me.
Yeah, give us a minute or two, get that train by us.
Oh,
We're
6:30.
we're gonna work on some soundproofing.
Okay, LaCoya.
all right, thank you. It's like by my office. I'm out by the Air Force Base, so the jet fly over there all the time. So again, the police department actually again reported with the highest overall response percentage, which is a change from the previous survey where the administration department had the highest favorable response percentage. The administration actually dropped from the from the first highest to the fourth. So that also comports with what I was saying earlier about what we saw in the leadership category, some decreases there. So in terms of, you can see the order of the departments there in terms of overall highest favorable response percentages. There were 2 drops in overall favorability, again, in administration, and then public works, water, and sewer. Administration decreased by 4%, public works, water, and sewer decreased by 6%. They didn't move to unfavorable, but they did move to neutral. And that, as I mentioned earlier, that could have to do with a number of things. It could be that they don't have an opinion on it. It could be they don't care. It could be an issue of knowledge, trust around the issue. There's a number of things that could be a reason for the shift to neutral. Fire department had the highest increase in favorability at 11%, and then the second highest increase was police. So one area to maybe be mindful of is looking at is that we did see an overall decrease in the police department participation this year. So while the scores went up, the comments are good, need to balance that with the participation rates and that overall. So if there are going to be any follow-up focus groups, things of that nature, just something to kind of keep in mind when formulating the questions for those groups. And now by job role, individuals, again, those who are non-supervisors, they had the highest favorable response percentage, again, for the second time, that they also had the highest in the initial survey. The favorable response percentage was 84%. That's an 11% increase over the previous year. The managers and supervisors, again, decreased by 1%. And then the director and assistant director level increased 4% to 83% as compared to last year. In the breakdown of tenure, we saw consistently, as we saw with last year, that new employees, those who have been there with the city a year or less, have the highest favorable response percentage. Again, that was the same thing with the initial survey. It was at 89% this year, which is about an 8% increase from last year. And then those in the 2 to 5 year range, that dropped a little bit by about 3%. It neutral, not to unfavorable. And then all other categories did see some pretty significant decreases in the unfavorable scores. So that's the 6 to 10, the 11 to 15, and the greater than 15. So some additional data may be good to gather. What percentage of the workforce are new hires within the past year might be a good question to ask. Maybe when holding focus groups, or kind of, if you do that, just kind of thinking through what things may have occurred over the past year and change that may have affected the 6 to 10 and 10 year plus employee group a little bit more, since again, we saw some decreases there in those groups in particular. And then this just is the visual that shows the ratings, the favorability ratings across all of the different categories. So all of the ones that we just covered. So your departments, your employee category, and the tenure, or excuse me, the job role, I should say, and then the tenure. So it just shows what those ratings were across all of those categories. So just a different way to kind of look at the data. So some of the areas that we saw that kind of stood out the most in terms of perhaps areas of concern would be in the public works, water and sewer, and then again, the supervisors, and then the 6 to 10 year tenured employees. Those were the areas that, again, we were seeing the most significant drops. And now some of the questions that yielded the highest favorable responses, they're listed here, what we call the top 5 questions. The success of my department or division is personally important to me. Still number 1, same percentage as the previous survey. 92% favorable response. I feel comfortable working with people in other departments. That was that's new as a top 5 question for this year. At 90%, I respect and value the members of my team and their contributions. Although it was a 5% decrease, it is still in the same place as the previous survey. At 88%, employees favorably responded that the City of Globe does not tolerate harassment or treating employees differently based on race, national origin, age, sex, religion, or ability. That is an 8% increase. That's tremendous progress. Employees there are shifting perspectives, as I mentioned, in that space, which is a really good thing. 86%, my supervisor provides me with the tools I need to stay safe during the pandemic. That was a new question for this year, and it ranked in the top 5. So employees were very positive and appreciative of how the city handled and managed things during the pandemic. The changes, this gives you the visual of what the changes were. One that I mentioned in terms of the first question, it stayed the same. You saw increase in favorable response percentage for the second highest question in the top 5, slight decrease for the third highest question, slight increase for the fourth highest question. And then, of course, that last question about the pandemic was a new question, so there was no baseline for comparison. But again, just a visual that does show that year-to-year comparison.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Mike. You got a question, LaQuia?
LaQuia, the second question there, I feel comfortable working with people in other departments. I guess I would address this to the department heads and staff. Are we cross-training our employees now?
Between departments, within the department, but I don't know how much cross-department cross-training. I think we always succession planning and cross-training. So when there's one person we've had a hard time getting people to take vacations because they feel compelled to be here because there's so much going on, the pandemic and everything like that. One of those holdups is we got to make sure that we say go, we can take care of it, we can, help that so that the cross training inside the department is very good. I don't see the cross training across just because some are so different.
I would encourage that we keep that practice up if our workers are happy working with other workers in other departments.
Well, and that, now they interact so much. I mean, there's so much. We have the water office and city hall. Public works goes out and supports everybody. Finance and IT, fleet, our service. Their jobs are servicing other departments, and I think that's the genesis of that. Is make sure that our departments that do that kind of service help. But it goes in every direction. There's not one department that wouldn't drop what they need to do and go help in a pinch.
Hey, so then moving on to the bottom 5 questions. So those are the ones that did the highest unfavorable response percentage and or the lowest favorable response percentage. So you can see here the first of the bottom 5 is the organization has an effective system in place for communicating necessary information. As I mentioned earlier, communication emerged as the #1 area of concern, even taking the place of pay. And generally, just as an aside, those are generally the top 2 areas that we see across the board with surveys that are areas of opportunity for improvement for employers. Generally, pay and communications do rank pretty low. Again, the good news is that you have the comments to provide some specifics around what employees are seeking, and that can go a really long way to targeting your efforts and making some improvements in very specific ones in response to what employees have said. The second in the bottom 5 was in my division, hiring and promotion decisions are fair and equitable. There was a 1% decrease in favorable responses. It was in the bottom 5 questions in 2020, but it was number 5. So now it's number 2. So it's come up. The third is I feel I can share my ideas and options without fear of opinions, I should say, without fear of negative consequences. This was new to the list, 6% increase in favorable, yet still made it to the bottom 5. Number 4 is the City of Globe cares about employees. That was an increase in favorable, decrease in unfavorable. That was the #1 bottom question, #1 in the bottom 5 in 2020, and now we see it's number 4. So it's a significant drop there. That's excellent movement. That's tremendous progress to be able to see movement there. So employees are seeing the efforts again that are being made, and it is making a difference. So overall, you see that there are questions here that were on the previous list on 2020, but they switched positions, and then a couple of new questions. The last one rounding out the bottom 5 is, I am satisfied with the opportunities for my own advancement in the organization. And that one is new to the list. That was not on the 2020 bottom 5. Again, just another visual that shows you the same thing as we did with the top 5. You can see with the bottom 5, and it just shows you the movement between 2020 and 2022. Now, some of the top comment themes, as I mentioned, there were open-ended questions, and we do what's called a comment analysis, where we look at reoccurring words, reoccurring terms, phrases, and then we drill down and look at what themes those words are representing. So some of the strengths that came out in the comment themes: people, teamwork, camaraderie, the mission, the vision, departmental, organizational improvements, leadership support. All of those remain top strengths for the organization. The many employees are driven by the mission, which is tremendous, and we saw that in 2020. We continue to see that as well. This year, a new category did emerge, department and organizational improvements, as an area of improvement, or excuse me, as a strength. And then in terms of areas of improvement, communication, specifically transparency, pay, staffing and retention, as I mentioned earlier, recruitment, training, fairness and equity, leadership, particularly with regards to follow through and equipment. So some of the comments are showing that employees appreciate what is happening and the communication regarding, say, the survey goals for improvement, but they're really seeking some more follow-up on the initial feedback that was provided. They want to know more about the steps the city is taking to uphold the commitments that were made and messaging around some of the things from the first survey. They're seeking more transparency with the efforts that they realize are underway, but they're just looking for some more communication on that. Also, some comments did speak to the need for some additional improvements, particularly regarding procuring and maintaining